24-25 season is finally here, and on the left wing we're back to look ahead to this weekend's games, the season ahead, and all the storylines that we're going to be discussing over the next couple of months. My name is Rúaidhrí O'Connor. I'm joined by Luke Fitzgerald. Luke, good to have you back. Good summer?
Oh, busy one, Rhodes. Exams. I'm like Van Wilder, still doing exams. Hopefully the last one for a while. And change job outside of this, so I've another career outside of this kind of stuff. So it's all positive stuff, I think. But yeah, raring to go now. Really looking forward to a new rugby season. What about you? Did you get a bit of a break?
Yeah, it felt like a proper break this time. Although, like, every time you check your phone, there's another bit of rugby news. Felix Jones, David Nusifora joining Scotland, the Rugby Championship, all the stuff that's been going on. So it's been. Like, it didn't feel like it went away that much, but no, it was good. It was a long season last year, and this one goes to August the 3rd, so it's going to be a bit.
I hadn't checked that.
The third line test is August the 3rd, so it's going to be it's going to be a bit crazy. And like even today, Simon Easterby being confirmed that he's going to be standing in for Andy Farrell. It's all go. We'll come back to that, I think, Luke. But the season ahead. Already, the URC is kicking off on Friday, and already there's discussions about whether it's going to be a competition in a year or two's time. That there's been a merger with the Premiership mooted and floated, and it sounds like the RFU are interested in a kind of a full merger, talk of a BNI league. The competition in its own right, though, feels to me like it's never been in a better place. That you've played in all the different iterations, Celtic, Magners, Guinness Pro 12, Rabbit whatever versions. There were times where I really wondered about the relevance of it all, but now it really feels like they've got something stable, something structured, something that the provinces can buy into, the fans understand. I can see the attraction of a Premiership merger, and the big English clubs coming over. What's your sense of where it is and what they should do with this?
I'm not sure I'd touch it. I think they need us more than we need them currently. It's always nice to kind of add new strings to the bow, but I just wonder, does it take a little bit away from the cup competition then? Now that might not be a concern for all parties involved, but I don't think it'd be good for the competition. I like to have the bit of change, with Champions Cup. I suppose the model that you're probably looking at is FA Cup and Premier League, but as you can see, the league is just really taken on a new. It might not do that, in football, but it could do that, and I would hate that. I suppose I've grown up on the cup being the big one that you're trying to win. It's just maybe a little bit more difficult to win, although not as probably hasn't been the case for Leinster, Yeah, no, I'm not sure. The URC needs to do that at the moment. I really like the product. I was really bought in. I'm sure, like lots of the other supporters were last year. I thought the end of the season was brilliant. I think the end of last season was brilliant as well. There's genuine competition at the end of the season, and it doesn't have to be the home team that wins all the way through. Which actually is probably one of the weaknesses possibly with the cup, is that it's very difficult to turn over the home teams generally over the last maybe 15, 20 years of the competition when you get to the knockout stages. So that hasn't been the case really in the league, which I think is brilliant, and it speaks a lot to how much teams really want to win and how much they've bought in as well. So it's in a really good place. You never want to settle and just accept what you have and sit idly by, but I don't think they've done that. I think they've got a really good product now.
It's been 3 seasons, since the South Africans came on board, the big 4 South African regions. And we've had, the final has been in South Africa every year, but we've had winners from 3 different countries. None of them have been Leinster. Leinster have never been to a final of this tournament. And what we'll do in this show, I think, is run through the 4 provinces, talk through the main talking points. And we kind of have to start with Leinster. I think we probably naturally talk about them a lot given you played for them. But coming off the back of last season, losing the final, the semi-final, Kieran Frawley kicking the winning drop goal in South Africa to just add to that debate that we've been having in here for years and years at this stage. Where do you see them now, having lost 3 Heineken Champions or Investec Champions Cup finals in a row, having suffered the disappointments that they've suffered, but bringing in such brilliant players over the course of this year? I mean, it feels like a pivotal year for Leo Cullen, the whole organisation. We probably said that last year. Where are you at Leinster right now as we go look ahead to the coming campaign?
I think the signings are excellent in terms of what they do add something. I think there'll definitely be injuries in that back line. I don't understand the Jordy Barrett thing personally. I just don't get it as just an overall I know why you bring him. He's a brilliant rugby player. but I just don't know where he really fits and what he like. Does he make Irish rugby better? Which I think is probably one of the functions of the provinces. Even if Leo Cullen is very much focused on what Leinster can do, you always want to kick on to the Irish team. And he's actually, in fairness to him, he's always a big supporter of that. He wants as many of his guys included in the Irish squad. So I think maybe it damages that a little bit. But it does, look, it ups the competitive pressures in there. I don't know where he fits though in his top two positions, which in my mind is fullback and 12.
Like,
what do you think?
I'm sure we talked about it last season. So fullback, we now have Jamie Osborne joining Hugo Keenan as international fullbacks in the Leinster squad. Like the last 4, maybe even 5 players to play fullback for Ireland, all play for Leinster, are in the current squad. You got Jimmy O'Brien, Kieran Frawley, who I don't think either of us think is a fullback, but he has played there. Jordan Larmour played there in the Six Nations just recently. So you have 5 players who played fullback for Ireland in the last 12 months. And now you're bringing in an All Black who can play fullback and do it very well. Kicks long range goals, which really I think Frawley can do, but not with the same kind of regularity. So you say, right, he's not going to be playing fullback because Hugo Keenan's probably going to play there. He comes back. I think he's going to be involved very early. I interviewed him last week. You know, he threw himself straight back in off the back of the sevens. And he would have watched Jamie Osborne, I think, and gone, no, like, I need to respond. So then you got midfield. Look, you know, the chances are there might be an injury along the way, but as it stands, Henshaw and Ringrose are fit to start the season. Like, do you break up that partnership, which is potentially the Ireland partnership? And certainly they're almost always involved in the 23. Or do you put him in that number 23 jersey? You don't do 6-2 anymore, and you have an All Black who can come on at any point in a game, pretty much in any position apart from scrum half across your back line, and impact games. It seems like a bit of a waste. It seems like a lot of money to spend on a like I'm really not sure where
obvious place,
but is he better than any of those players? Like,
is the obvious place the wing though, Ruds? I think that's probably where, like, to me it feels like Osborne and Jimmy O'Brien are going to be the big losers here. I think you keep Lowe on the left.
Larmour too.
Yeah, Larmour, sorry, of course, as well. Excuse me. Yeah, no, and in fairness, he was the starter there at the end of the season. Yeah. So I think, to my mind, that's the most natural fit for him. I think, you know, he complements your kicking game massively. You know, he also is a ball player himself, so he's lovely to have him behind the wing. Kind of similar to Lowe, good offloading game, good passing game. He's big, he's good in the air, he's a good tackler. And a good defender, I think, as well. And I don't always believe that about some of the New Zealand guys that come over, I think it's something that you can take time to bed in from Super Rugby defensively. Yeah. Less so for South African guys, don't know why that is. Maybe it's just more emphasis on it there. But for the New Zealanders and Aussies, sometimes that's a bit of a change over here. But I don't think he'll be that because he's played 12. I think he's got a good appreciation of it. So I think that's the most natural fit for him if I'm trying to get him in the team. But I still don't like or love the idea of leaving out any of those guys and reducing their rugby time, because they're competing pretty hard with each other. And I think they all have a good chance of getting in the Irish team. Now, I think Nash was brilliant as well, so he's obviously there too. I know that Balakoon is obviously I think he's got a hamstring injury at the moment, so he's coming back. You've got Stockdale, but he's more a left winger, really, isn't he? So Hansen is coming back into the picture as well, but we don't know. That seemed like it was a very serious show.
He's back on the pitch now.
Is he? Okay, well, that's super. Yeah, well, that's great to hear, because I was a little bit worried about that took so long, but there's massive competition there, and I'd be pretty good at it if I was one of those guys in the Leinster team and I wasn't getting an opportunity for an All Black in there. Now, look, that's just the rough, like that people will argue that, you're playing at one of the top clubs in Europe, and that's just the rub of the green. You're always going to have these one or two of these guys that come in from foreign countries.
What kept Rob Kearney out of a Champions Cup campaign at one stage of his career. He added to the competition in your position, for a long time. So
I think was that the year Rob had mumps though.
He came back, but there were times where Issa was picked ahead of an Irish international, and he would have brought you all on, I'm sure, like having him there training the competition. So there is an argument for that. I don't necessarily agree with it right now. I'm not sure it's the right move, but at the same time, it's a fascinating piece of recruitment. We won't see him until December. He does have the rest of the Rugby Championship to play.
The bit that stands out, Rose, I don't know about you, but the bit that stands out to me that really has improved the team, which is probably what I probably would have preferred to talk about. Preferred, but I think is more pertinent, is what they've done in the pack. Yeah, I don't know do you feel that way as well?
Yeah, I think the two big things is, like, Slimani gives them a weapon at the scrum. albeit, and Robin McBride was up for media yesterday. He was talking that his skills are much better than they anticipated. That he'll fit into what they do in terms of their attack as well. Which I was a bit worried that you're bringing in a pure scrummager. At the same time, he's a very, very good destructive scrummager. I think he'll do a lot of damage at URC level. The other big thing, Snyman will give them like an incredible X factor that we saw at Munster. You wonder, are they going to tailor moves just to get his hands on the ball? Yeah. He frees his hands in contact so well. He also wins big collisions in the tide. He splinters mauls. He'll just add so much to their pack, and he also puts a rocket up James Ryan as well. That's a really hot competition there as to where he fits into their pack and whether he's a bench.
McCarthy. So this, I want to ask you this because I think McCarthy. Everyone thinks McCarthy's the shoe in there. But I actually think Ryan is. I think Ryan is a shoe, and if he's there, you have to play him. And I just think every time he's not playing for Leinster or off the pitch for Leinster, they are diminished. I think quite considerably, actually.
Yeah, I think we saw the value of Ryan in that second test in South Africa because he was left out of the first test. As far as I remember, it's all a bit hazy at the moment. But he came into that team that week, having been in and out. Like obviously he had an injury for a lot of last season. Not sure he was at his best towards the end of the Leinster campaign. But he showed what he had, and he emptied the tank that day, and I think they brought him off after 55, 60 minutes. He just gives you, there's a luxury of having Snyman there through the season. It's whether when we get to the big, approaching Cardiff and the Champions Cup final, if they're there when those big decisions are made. I have a feeling they're going to use Snyman in that almost Springbok role. He'll play the small URC games. He'll be the bully boy in those games. Yeah. And we saw with Munster, when he was played from the start in a lot of games, he didn't have the same influence. I think you'll see Ryan and McCarthy start the big games with Snyman coming off after 50 minutes. So Ryan will be sent out to empty the tank. Maybe McCarthy one week, Ryan the next. But that's not to say Snyman could just train the house down. He's very close to coming back. He picked up a foot injury playing rugby championship. He's back in week 2 or week 3, we believe.
Is that what I didn't know with that injury? I just knew it was a foot. Right,
and it gives him a head start.
It's not a serious one. Yeah,
and it gives him a head start on the Irish guys as well. So he'll have played a game or two before they come back in rounds 3 and 4. Okay. The big thing I think is the fact that Neil Abber has had a full pre-season this year. Yeah. Now Blindall's come in, the attack coach, and his wife had a baby back in New Zealand, so he's missed a couple of weeks of training to go back to be with her. Which is completely fair enough, but it's a bit disruptive that last year their attack coach and their defence coach were missing for pre-season. This year the defence coach has been there and he's the kind of main man. But you would imagine that his ideas will bed in a lot more based on the fact that he's been there every day of every session. And the internationals aren't the way at World Cups this year. They've been there for every session. I'm not sure we saw it. Certainly the Bordeaux pre-season game wasn't great. Northampton, they played very well. It's hard to gauge in pre-season anyway.
I always disregard it, Ruds, to be honest. It's a fitness session, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
But yeah, look, we're discussing, but
you had your issues with their defence last year, I think it's fair to say. Like
I thought it was what really let them down. I thought there was some awful, deplorable defending in the final at key moments, really, really basic stuff out in the wide channels actually. So that is the challenge of playing this new defence that everyone thinks they have to use. Part of me thinks that's a little bit overdone. I think if you look at New Zealand's performance against Ireland in the final or the quarter-final, at the World Cup, there is another way to defend very, very effectively, and it's a real shutout type defence, and it's probably less risky. And it's definitely easier for the wide men to defend using that. So what I'm talking about doing is probably more of a hybrid type defence. Now maybe people will think that's an old school point of view, but I didn't see a better defensive performance at the World Cup than that New Zealand one against Ireland, because I thought Ireland had probably had the best attack in that competition actually, and New Zealand completely locked them down using it. So it was just managing them a little bit more. It wasn't off the line like as hard as you can every single time. It was just a bit more controlled. Took the space when it was there for them. Really aggressive when they needed to be, but really, really compact all the way through and manage them. Use the sidelines as defenders, kind of an old school method, but they were still very hard. And when they got to those spaces, they just look really organised. I thought Schmidt had done a really good job there. They've really competed hard at the breakdown, and that then opens you up to kind of defend a little bit more. It's an old school way of thinking.
Yeah.
Defend more aggressively. I should have finished that sentence. It's an old school way of thinking, possibly not as in vogue, but I think very, very effective. And part of me wonders about this defence. I remember talking to Ben Teo about this. I thought this was kind of an interesting thing to talk about, because I was thinking about it during the week randomly it was on some public transport somewhere, but on the weekend, and I was thinking about it. I was like, I remember having a conversation with Ben Teo, and we were talking about coming hard off the line all the time, and Matt O'Connor at the time had wanted us to be kind of a little bit more square, a little bit harder up off the line. And I remember Theo talking about rugby league and burning out players, you know, and coming up hard all the time. Like, the teams that can do it probably the best, I think, has always been South Africa, but I always think it's because they have the best depth and particularly in the forwards. So I just worry about this defence. It kind of seems like it's an all-in type thing. It fatigues. It really burns you out. I feel like it can really impact your attack as well. I think it really impacts your forwards at different times of the game. It hasn't. Like, Leinster should have enough depth in there, so they should be able to use it, technically speaking. But I think it takes something away from your attack. I always believe that about this kind of defence. And I remember Theo saying that about how they managed it in rugby league, because he said, look, for the first 50, 60 minutes, it's generally a fitness test. You know what I mean? It's basically just doing like up backs, you know, for kind of 50, 60, and then it's who can last. And the game generally opens up towards the kind of latter end of it. And he said the feeling there was they kind of managed the first 20, 30 metres a bit more conservatively, because they don't want to burn people out. And I think sometimes I worry about this type of defence, and you know, the depth and the pressure it puts on you. And I think it definitely took something away from Leinster's attack last season too.
It's funny, I spoke to a professional coach very recently who made that exact point, and also went as far as saying that's why South Africa were doing 7-1. Because the energy it took from their forwards to do that all game, they had to do it. It wasn't necessarily this tactical masterclass. It was a point of necessity that the starting forwards had to burn themselves out. The only one who's able to do it for 80 minutes is Peter Steph-Toy, because he's the only one they never take off. It was really, I hadn't really thought about it in that way. It's interesting that Ben Teo's kind of comments kind of echo that.
But he wasn't talking about it in the attack sense. He was just talking about burning out your players.
Yeah, the whole game.
And they have rolling subs as well.
You need energy for everything. Like, I mean, breakdowns become such a mess in rugby now. Like, every ruck is going to take it out of you. So it's like Leinster's attack. I know you said the defence was behind their kind of their malaise. It wasn't a malaise, but what went wrong for them really? Like, their attack, I don't think ever. Statistically, it was very much on par with the previous season, but when the biggest games, I thought they lacked that spark in the 22. They were able to get into the 22, but when they were there, I thought they lacked ideas. They just looked a bit slower. They looked a bit more lateral, and they just looked like they lacked energy. And I think that ties into what we're talking about there.
I want to get your thoughts on this. We talked about it a lot, myself and Will, last season. I thought the amount of white line fever at key moments, the amount of times they got held up in big games, and it's now a 22 dropout. It's a very different proposition now than it was. You know, 5-minute scrum was great. You know what I mean? Let's just hang around here. Possibly not great against the likes of La Rochelle or whatever, Toulouse, but still, it's like, you know, you're still down. It's a scrum. If you can get it in there quickly, you're still in a great position. It's not as advantageous now. And I felt there was loads of times in big games they might have been ahead, they made it a little bit sweaty, or they just went like one phase too early when they were chasing the game. I wonder about their patience down there. I wonder, was that something they discussed? I'd love to know the stats in it, because obviously, you know, I'm not going to be able to compile that. I'm just watching it from my own eye. I felt that happened loads last year. Did you think that? It's
funny, even now that you say the South Africa test, the first drop goal comes from a goal line dropout. The one of the tries comes from a goal. Sorry, two of the tries over the two tests come from a goal line dropout. So Ireland were getting held up as well. Geordie Barrett obviously held up Ronan Kelleher in a big incident where he went. I mean, I think the criticism,
he should have got that one.
He should have got it, but I think that a lot of people would say he should have held on to it and not broken away from them all at that moment. Like, again, I don't have the stats on it, but I do think they lacked a bit of composure when Exeter Chiefs were doing it so well before the law change. Leinster became that kind of really good at doing that. I think they can mimic the Exeter Chiefs model of getting into the 22, get onto the 5 metre line and just pound. James Tracy scored loads of tries off it. I think then when the law changed, I think they've struggled a little bit to come away from that to some degree. But
a very difficult place to attack, though.
It is.
Like, you've got the least space, the least time. It puts massive pressure on your execution, and I think I think you might be right. I think, do you know where they were really creative is off those tap penalties. They've been really creative around that. They've been creative off the goal line dropouts. They've been really good there. But where I think they haven't been as creative probably is actually in open play, where they have to think about what their setup is and how they're going to break down a defence close to the line, because I don't always think it's viable to be going out wide against teams there, or crossfield kicking, which are two kind of nice ways to unlock a team that's going to be coming hard off the line no matter what close to the line. But I just wonder, have they been, I'd love to see them do some thinking about, because there's definitely creativity in the coaching staff there. You can see it from, as I said, the tap and goes. Leinster have been a real leader in that and really, really creative. But I'd love to see a little bit of that, I think, in open play. I'd love to see them go, okay, well, look, look, this is where we're coming unstuck. This might be a good idea. We're getting a little bit of pay here regularly. Let's see if we can work on this technique a little bit more, whether it's, a change of running angle, whether it's a change of personnel, whether you drop in an extra person on the inside or outside, or just a little bit of something. I'd love to see a little bit of new thinking there, because my sense from last year is that they didn't get enough pay for, kind of being in good positions. And I think when you think back in the last couple of years in the big games against the big teams, I don't think they've got as good pay there when they really needed it.
Yeah.
And I just wonder, you think of the La Rochelle ones, they're kind of held up a lot close to the line, even if it is a 5-minute scrum.
It's those games where they'll be judged. It's not like the first 4 games: Edinburgh away, Dragons at home, Benetton away, and Munster at Croke Park, which in fairness will be a big game. 55,000 tickets already sold.
Really?
Like, it's heading towards a really big crowd and a really big event early in the season. I was going to ask you about the 10s, but look, we'll be talking about the 10s all season.
I know we have to talk about it. I like. What do you think?
I think maybe it's intertwined with it. So I was going to ask you about Leo Cullen, and he is getting more criticism from fans. There's obviously huge loyalty to him amongst former Leinster players like yourself. I completely understand. He's a club legend. He's won so much for the club, with the club. He transformed the culture of the club, or certainly played a massive role in it, probably twice. As a captain and a coach.
That's fair. Yeah.
It's been 4 seasons. He sat down with Brian Driscoll recently, and he acknowledged himself that he feels it had. They've underperformed in terms of the results at the end of the season. Is it fair to have criticism of it, to put pressure on him, or do you think it's more of a share blame? Do the players need to take the blame? And also, how much of that criticism do you think is derived from the fact that a lot of people think they're getting the number 10 decision wrong, and ultimately it's one of the most important decisions of the whole thing, that if they got that right, things would flow from there?
Yeah, I think you can argue. I think it's maybe start at the end. I think the halfback positions are still, I think, your most important decisions. I think it's getting, depending on who your personnel are, your view might change on that. I think lots of people would feel Gibson Park is probably the most important player on the pitch for both Leinster and Ireland when he's playing, just in terms of what he gives your game plan and what he enables you to do. Is he? I thought he was a little bit. He's back. Is he? Yeah. Passed him in the swimming pool. He looks in good shape, in fairness. Yeah. So I think it was last week. But look, that's good to hear. I think he is a big part of the game plan. I think the 10 is a big issue for them. Yeah, look,
it was huge last year. They kept they had 4 different contenders at different times. Which,
and in fairness, Ross Byrne was injured for a portion of the season after Munster, wasn't it? He did his bicep
for a good chunk, until after the Six Nations.
So that did kind of interrupt things a little bit. Look, at some point they're going to have to make a decision. They've got too many players playing the position, I think. My sense is that the pressure will come on for Frawley, but I think if they continue with the model they've had before, he won't get enough game time and will never be able to deliver what they need there. I think Ross Byrne is an excellent player, but I just wonder, has he got it at the, when it comes to the kind of crucial games. I do think there might be another level, and I think he's probably. Look, I think it's probably been proven he might not be the guy. I don't think he is. I think, honestly, I think Frawley is. And then you worry, like Prendergast and Harry, like where are they getting their game time? I think what they've tried to do has been too fair.
Yeah.
And I don't think that works for anyone. I think someone's got to make a call. I think Ulster are crying out for something there. I think a really high quality operator. I think Leinster should be sending someone there. I think Humphreys is ideally positioned to make that call. He should know the qualities too, and that would really help up there. And it's a big club, so that's I think they need to make a call on that. I think they probably feel they have. I think they probably need to change the decision, personally, and they need to just stick with it for quite a while. There's been a few things that haven't helped there. Frawley's injury profile isn't great either. So there is challenge there, and there is caveats. In terms of Cullen, the kind of main body of the question you asked, I think there will be a bit of pressure on. I think he's a winner. He's a guy you want to work for. He's a guy you want to work with. He has got great pedigree. My sense is he will get the thing right, but I think he'll know that there's pressure on him. I don't think he'll be trying to shirk that, but I'm sure at the same time he'll want to protect his position and say, well, look, they've been playing brilliant rugby, and I've lost by a point and a couple of, what I mean? They've been close run things.
Absolutely.
But the fact of the matter is, I think he's still got the best squad in the league. He certainly has this year, I think. In the Cup and the league. And he hasn't won either. And I think he needs to go ahead and win both. And I'm really emphasising both. I think he needs to do a double this year. That's not to put any pressure on them. I think Leinster should be doing it every year. And I think they've got the quality to do it. They've got the depth. They've got some extra added strings to the bow now.
No shortage of motivation either.
No, they should be killing everyone this year. They're such a good squad. I know people will say, "Oh, that's the Leinster." It's genuinely not. Like if you look at the squads, if you look at where even the other Irish provinces are, I don't think anyone else has taken a step forward. I think Leinster definitely have.
I think on the 10 pecking order, just from what I've heard, Connacht obviously came in looking for Prendergast on loan last year. Leinster were like, absolutely not. There was a serious play made for Harry Byrne to go. He turned that down. I think that's gone down really badly, certainly at the RFU level. And I don't think it's gone down pretty well at Leinster either. I think he probably starts in fourth. I've a feeling this weekend we might see.
Year, though,
he was good at times. Yeah, I think the Ulster game towards the end of the season, he played poorly up in Ulster towards the end of the last season. What was a big, like a game that actually cost them very dearly. I have a feeling they might start with Ross Byrne with Sam Prendergast on the bench this weekend. I'd imagine Prendergast will go with the Emerging Ireland tour. To get him a couple of weeks with the Ireland coaches. I think he'll probably debut in November across that window, because Ireland are really investing a bit of time in him, and if he does get that international exposure, then suddenly he's in a much better position. Now he's got things to work out certainly around his defence, but they could see the upside. And then there's like this kid Casper Gabriel's gone straight into the academy, one of the first people to go straight into the academy for years out of school. Who's a 10. They've got there's more coming. Like this debate's not going to end anytime soon, but we have to move on. We spent too much time on Leinster. Munster, there's absolutely no question about their number 10 hierarchy, although Billy Burns apparently has been doing really, really well in training. Graham Roundtree was up for media today, and he Billy Burns did an interview as well, which was interesting, but he's on a 1-year deal, Billy Burns, but Roundtree's already wants to sign him on a longer term deal. He's talking about he wants to get him back in the international mix. He said he's been really, really good, and they see him as a really important player, because Crowley will be around less and less this season. But he's one of the new signings, probably less. They're very happy with their squad. Talking to them today, they think actually they've got a stronger depth chart than they had last season. But I do look at the players they've lost in terms of well, their injuries at the start of the season are not so bad, but to lose Snyman, Zebo, Carberry and Frisch, to me, denies you of an awful lot of the X factor that you had last season. Frisch was such a good player at opening up defences. Zebo was so good last year, full back. Carberry to come on into games and see the pictures, and then Snyman was just so good at breaking open defences with his hands. Now John Klein is back fit. He's a very good second row, but he doesn't do what Snyman does. Where do you see Munster? They reached obviously won it 2 years ago. They reached the semi-final last year and kind of blew it a little bit at home to Glasgow. Last 16 of Europe 2 years in a row, which they'd hoped to do better, but they got they got a horrible injury run last year during the pools, and then a bad draw.
They made a mess of that. They should have gone. I think they should have gone far in the competition last year. Yeah, look, I think Munster. I just don't feel like they've gone forward. Do you know what I mean? I think they're probably in a similar position to me. Although, like a Dogbu, hopefully you see him at some point. His
younger brother looks like he's a real player.
Does he look like? I haven't seen him. So he
looks like he's put on about 2 stone in pre-season.
Really,
and he's come back huge. Okay. And I would expect him to be involved in the first couple of weeks. He's played in pre-season, and he's got a big frame on him. He's a back row. Sean Adogbo. There's a couple of other young players who are coming through who look really good.
But back row is not, like, if you think about it, so I think like a Hearn is obviously, I'd love to see him kind of kick on this year. I'd love to see a Dogboot back in. I hope that, because that's a terrible place to injure. It's not a good place to injure the Achilles. Brian Gleeson's obviously out as well, who I'd really like to see kick on this year. I think there's lots of potential there. I suppose my issues probably remain around that front row. I think is probably where I think they might have a few issues. Their one advantage over Leinster is that they're very settled at 9 and 10. Well, maybe not so much at 9, but they have quality there. I expect Casey to have a better season this year. I think he kind of fell off a little bit last season, I think. Now Murray was good too. There was a bit of a combination of things, but you'd love to have like Leinster, I think, would love to have a Crowley situation where you just know who you're going to pick in the big games. Despite what they say about Burns, Crowley is the standout.
Yeah, I think Burns either is a bench option to fill in the weeks when Carberry's not there. The experience he has, he's a good signing. Like, I think it was a good no-brainer to pick him up off Ulster.
You know what? He's a like for like, and he's a better injury profile than Carberry. So I think it's a good signing. Like, Carberry's already injured, the poor guy. He's made of paper mache, obviously. But yeah, look, I think Byrne, captain as well, and I know he kind of did the job. Like, he's such an important guy for them. But I think he's one of the best players in the competition. Like, he is so good. So look, I think their pack's in good shape, provided they get a few of those guys back and they can stay injury free. I do worry about Zebo and missing him. I think he was big. Like, he at a lot of points in the season, he gave them a big lift, and he was really, really good. Now, I think his injury profile towards the end wasn't great either. So that doesn't help when a big player for you isn't around to be selected. So Yeah, look, I think maybe it was best for all parties that, and he obviously has something exciting to go into business-wise, I think, afterwards. So I think that's worked out for all parties because they probably did need to move on just in terms of his age and so there's a interesting like Kilgallen, like how does he go? I wonder. O'Brien as well, like does he kind of kick on from last season? That was a bad mistake he made in that against Glasgow, so not a great way for him to finish last season, even though I saw some positive things from him. So yeah, like I think I am watching them. My sense, I think I'll stick to my original answer though. I don't know how much they've come on. I think their pack might have come on a little bit. Possibly, but I still feel like the same issues around that front row a little bit.
Jaeger makes a big difference, and he's had a full pre-season.
That will help. That was a bad injury he got last year as well.
But he's back training now. He's done a full pre-season, which last year he came in midway through the season. It was he got his Ireland cap and he did well for them. But I think he does add something to them. Darren Barron's back on deck. He's a very good hooker.
Yeah, he's good.
So I think with the thing they need to do is like their medical department and their S&C needs to keep players on the pitch for the whole season. I know you can't account for every injury, but the run they had was a disaster. What the profile of the squad, Peter O'Mahony's in this 1 year deal, Conor Murray's in this 1 year deal. They're the two senior statesmen. I suppose you could add Stephen Archer, John Ryan to that bracket, but really this now looks like kind of Jack Crowley's team, Craig Casey's team, the players who kind of spearheaded Gavin Coombs, who spearheaded that league win 2 years ago, John Hodnett. Those kind of guys have taken ownership, and there's a kind of a nucleus of about a 24 to 26-year-old group there who it's now their team, and the other guys will definitely feed into that. Obviously Byrne is the leader, but that group, everyone was excited about them a couple of years ago. They have come through and become a very strong unit for Munster, but
I think they're good. I don't think you'd like to play them, Ruds. Like I think that pack, if Crowley's kicking the ball well, I think I do worry about how they'll Bar Nash in that back three. I just wonder who's a real attacking.
Abraham's who they've signed from Leon has a real.
Is he? Yeah.
Oh, he's
meant to be. I haven't really seen him, but I've heard unbelievable things. But yeah, we haven't seen him yet. So I mean, how does he deal with the wet night in the Dragons or something? So is he? Look, that is an exciting signing, and it does give them a little bit. But Nash, to my mind, is the only guy I know is a proven. Yeah. I know when I see him, I go, okay, well, look, he's a threat, and he's somewhere that Crowley can go to break a team down. But I don't think anyone would want to play them if they have their full hand or full deck to hand. I think in the pack, I think they're really tough. And that 1 to 10 is like you could be a little bit better in the front row, I think, but generally speaking, the back five are very strong, and they've got good depth there. So they'd be a nightmare to get any kind of good ball against. Their line out should be very good, and they've got a very settled Z9 and 10. So their kicking game should be pretty solid. So, look, I think. Interesting to hear they're very excited about what they have. I hope they can produce. I'd love to see them build on the last couple of seasons, but my sense is they might end up in the similar kind of position roles. I think there's a few pieces. If you're asking me to win a cup, which is always what I think, what I'd be aiming for if I'm a Munster, if I'm running Munster, I think they're still a little bit off there. Yeah. I think there's another. Did you feel is that your sense?
I'm not sure they're strong. I think they've recruited some very good players. I think obviously having John Klein back on deck is really important. I think that he adds so much to their tight five. He's such a tough player, brilliant set piece player. The last 2 years they've relied on this kind of late season spring surge where the weather gets better. I think they need to find consistency across the year. Where I think they'll struggle is maybe to break teams down. Abraham's, I've seen him play for the Sharks, less so for Leon, but the bits that I did see,
YouTube stuff on him.
He is like, I don't know what he's like defensively. I'm interested to see what his high ball work is like, and when we get to the bad weather. Yeah. But if they can get him any space, like Roundtree compared him to Jason Robinson today, and he played with Jason Robinson, so he has. Like in Leon, he would have played more, but for the rules over French qualified players and stuff. Okay, I think he got squeezed out a little bit. He maybe struggled to settle a bit. I think he'll do better maybe in an English language speaking country. He's from Parle on the Western Cape in South Africa. He's been at the Sharks. He's been at a big franchise before, and he's a bit of a star. I think he can fill that Thibaut void to a degree, but he's got to do it first. You're right, and look, the weather was beautiful down there today. I'm hoping they did an open session. They had 60 players on the pitch today, 3 teams interspersed. They trained fast, they trained hard. It was really interesting to watch. They opened up, they did a big press conference afterwards with gave us loads of time with them. It was really refreshing. That doesn't often happen with the provinces. It was really good to do, and they sold us their own vision for the season, which is I suppose what their job is to do. So now we just got to see them back it up on Saturday, but it's the kick off at Connacht. Maybe we'll skip to them because like they're facing into a difficult season in terms of the Dexcom Stadium is being rebuilt, or certainly they're building a new stand, and they've knocked down the Clan Terrace, which is where the noise comes from in the sport, in the old sports ground. And like one of my favourite places to go. I mean, the press box, it was like this wooden ramshackle thing at the back of the terrace. You had to go through the crowd to get up to it. But I love covering games there because you were in amongst it. You really felt like you were involved.
I've only
in
ever done the comms on the other side.
Yeah,
so yeah.
It's amazing. But I'm sure you've walked through it to play.
Oh, I have. It's brilliant. Yeah, through the stand. Yeah,
but it's gone. So like you've now got the two terraces behind. You've got the Greyhound stand. Like they're training there in a building site every day, which is kind of a weird one. Now they've recruited quite well, I think. They've let a lot of very experienced players go. They've been really good in pre-season, which obviously we pinch of salt. But they got Matt Hansen back on deck. But for Pete Wilkins, it's a big season because he took over from Andy Friend. They didn't finish well last year. Europe was a bit of a disaster. They underperformed.
Their defence rules, it's just a mess. That was the big thing. If they can be a bit stingier.
57 tries last season in the URC.
Yeah, so what was it? 18 games in the that's
too many.
Too many. Yeah.
What were you seeing?
Sorry, say it again.
What were you seeing in their defence?
I just felt like they just seemed to lose heart. Do you know, that kind of way? It wasn't even like it's like it goes beyond when you're conceding that many tries. It goes beyond just like defensive technique and what your systems are, all that kind of stuff. It goes down to actual personal standards, I think, and I thought they were really loose in big games, let teams away, like they put themselves in good positions, particularly at the start of the season. They had kind of couple of games you're going, oh, that's they're on track here for an upset, or and then they just went to sleep at the end of the game. So. Yeah, I think that's the bit I'd be looking for this year, and I think for them it's important that they get some of their big players a bit more. I think Bundy being out a lot is that's not good for them. Mac Hansen being out for a lot of the season, like he gives them a huge lift, and he's so good around the pitch. He's so involved in lots of stuff that's great about. I go so far as to say rugby. Like I just love watching Mac Hansen play. He's just a really, really nice rugby player, and he's big for Connacht. He gives them a big lift. So, I think their issue is always going to be against the bigger teams, how they cope with the weight of the pack and the bench. The kind of bench impact. That'll always be a challenge for them. But I think if you can build in that kind of mentality, that's just a little bit more teak tough, without going away from playing an expansive game plan, which I think they should be doing because I think they've got the players to do that, and that's where. In my opinion, if Connacht are going to compete, it's not going to be in breaking down a team with pure physicality. They have to be physical defensively. They've got to survive at set piece. But playing a fast game plan is what's going to suit them. Plus, their pitch is fast now as well. So that's where the future is for them. But they have to defend well. You can't be that open. It's great to be open in attack, but you can't be that open in defence.
They're not in the Champions Cup this year.
I think that helps, do you?
That was a disappointment for them last year that they didn't qualify for it. But now that they're actually at the start of a new season, it makes the season much more manageable.
I think it does. I think it's better for them. And I do think, because the league has to be number one for them. They have to do well in the league. And I think that's what Wilkins will be judged on. Friend, in fairness to him, was fairly consistent, seemed to get in those last one or two slots pretty regularly in terms of qualifying, and seemed to, got a win or two here and there as well with fairly skinny squad, I think. So, I think, the keys again would be keeping the squad fit. Can they get the defence sorted? If they do that, I think they should have enough in attack to be a threat, and they'll be difficult at home once they get the stuff right. I know, that'll be as difficult for other teams as it will be for Connacht, but their advantage is that they'll play half their games there, so they'll be more used to no atmosphere or a quiet ground or nothing to aim at if you're kicking, if it's still scaffolding or whatever it may be. So. Is it Dexcom Stadium? I don't know. Have they got an end date for when it's supposed to be built? You don't know.
I think it's a one. Well, I thought it was a one season job. I don't know.
So it's one season, roughly.
The RDS is going to take 2 to build a stand, so that's 2 years. Leinster are probably going to be in the Aviva, but that's what the latest was yesterday. They've sent out a notice, but so it may take longer. But certainly they're out this season. I'm not 100%. Cian Prendergast named captain at 24. I guess that's just a reflection of how he's played for them.
I think so, and he's probably I was going to say he's their best player, but Hansen probably is for me, and I've followed very closely by maybe Bundy a keeper.
He's probably one that sets the physical.
Oh, he's just very important for them, and I could see him being that kind of Muldoon type character for them, a bit more hard nosed as time goes on. I think he'll grow into a better player. I think he's still got that. Maybe I don't know whether it's just a haircut or whatever. He just feels a little bit loose or a little bit like he's a brilliant athlete. You can see all that.
Yeah.
I think as time goes on, he becomes a better player, more polished player. I think, as he's in more Irish camps, I think, you expect him to kind of improve and become a bit of a hard-nosed kind of professional player with tidying up some of the stuff that maybe is a little bit loose at the moment. And captaincy might be the perfect thing for someone like him. So the key thing, again, can he stay fit? You know, that's if he's fit, he'll be a big leader for them for a long time, I think.
I think one of his big jobs and one of Wilkins' big jobs is to kind of give them an identity again. I think they lost a bit of what. Like the sports ground's supposed to be a hard place to go last year. I keep going back to that Bordeaux game and how easy they were to play against. And Donegal O'Callaghan losing his head at half time on beat, like a pundit who rarely does. You know, like it took a lot to get Donegal O'Callaghan angry, and he really I just couldn't believe some of the tackling that went in that game, like a big game at home. You know,
that's a mentality though, Rhodes.
Yeah,
that's not like you could blame the coaches all you want. But really, like, that comes down to personal standards as a player. Like, do you want to put, when you put the jersey on, like, do you feel connected to the guys around you, and do you feel like, well, it's worth putting my body on the line? Like, they're basic things, I think, and it's really crucial to rugby. Like, whatever we say about tactics, who you select, what the game plan is, the basic tenets of it are that you're committed to the guy next to you and the supporters and the jersey, and you have your own personal standards around what kind of physical commitment you're going to put in every single time you go out. You're not going to get it right every time, but they just got it wrong too often last season. So the mentality has to change, and someone like Prendergast now, Hansen, Bundyaki, these guys need to grab a hold of that team now, I think. And
I think that they have young players. Prendergast being one of the older ones of this group, but who should be using this as a platform to get. He's been in a lot of Ireland squads, but he's got to be looking at trying to force his way into that Ireland team. You got Matthew Devine, looked really good last year, the scrum half.
Yeah, didn't he?
He's got a real prospect. Hugh Gavin was one of the best players in the 20s the last couple of years. He's got a big chance if he can get game time. Colin Ford was really good at the start of last season. So there's players there that if they can get a consistent run of form, they can use Connacht as a real platform to get into that international squad. There's nothing to stop them, because the next team we're going to talk about is Ulster, and like, they've had big budget cuts. They've lost a lot of their senior players, including Billy Burns, Will Addison, experienced guys. I know Billy Burns hasn't been this podcast's favourite out half the last couple of years, but he's been their starter for a long time.
Yeah.
He's an experienced player. They've lost a lot of experience over the summer. Richie Murphy's come in first pre-season in charge, but even he was talking last year, they have a 23-year-old Aidan Morgan who's never played in the Northern Hemisphere before as their starting 10. He's backed up by Jake Flannery, who's also 23, and then it's Jack Murphy, who's 20, and maybe Nathan Doak if he steps across. But that's experimental.
I think that's bad for his career. He's an excellent 9. He should be competing week in and week out with Cooney. That's a no-brainer for me.
But like, Ulster just don't. They look like they've a lot of really good young talent. They obviously have Henderson. McCluskey signed a new deal today. They've got it.
That was great. That's a huge lift for them. That's been hanging over them for the last month of the season. The McCluskey thing was not good because he's been their most consistent performer for, I'm going to say, 4 or 5 years nearly, I think.
But what I'm wondering is that, like, Ulster have always been able to get into that top 8, have always been competitive at Champions Cup. They've got a horrific Champions Cup group this year. It's going to be tough for Richie Murphy and this team. Their first 4 games of the season are Glasgow, the Lions and the Bulls away, and then Connacht at home. They're going to be affected as much as anyone by this emerging Ireland tour that's coming up, that the squad is being named tomorrow. So I guess what I'm wondering is, like, can Ulster keep that standard and kind of use this as a platform to build, or do you see a bit of pain for them before they get to that point?
Yes, I was looking at this group here now, just in my notes, but that's pretty horrific and a tough start as well. Look, I think the injury list doesn't help either at the moment. Like, you've got Hume, Cooney, Tom Stewart's out, Herring, Balcoon. They're all kind of senior players for them too, and that's like, look, Henderson's named captain again, which is a fairly obvious selection, but he's a key. Like, he needs to be fit for them, I think they actually might do okay this year. I like Richie Murphy as a coach. I think he's very level-headed. He's pretty tough as well. He can be really ruthless at times. Like, Richie's kind of renowned for that. He can have a pretty cutting one at you too. So I hope a pre-season helps. Obviously, the backdrop with the kind of financial constraints. I do see they're going in for some kind of bigger budgeting. I think from, I don't know how that works up north, but they're looking for, is it 40 million of funding over the next 3 or 4 years? So maybe that will ease some of the burden and maybe get them back, even keeled. 10 will be the big issue for them, which is why I think it's crazy that there's no real kind of discussion about what's going on with the Leinster 10s. There's too many there for Leinster, and one of those guys I think could have a brilliant career up in Ulster and put themselves in the Irish frame. There's 3 of those guys that are nowhere near an Irish frame. Byrne is, but Ross Byrne is. Harry Byrne is nowhere near an Irish call-up, nor is Prendergast at this point, even though he's on the radar. So one of those guys going up there would make a big difference. I think that's a really obvious one, and they would be great competition. And they're kind of pure 10s as well. You're not talking about moving Doak or one of these kind of things. So Yeah, look, I think, if they can get the guys fit, there's still a good pack there. There's a bones of good pack. I think some guys played well. I think McCall, I thought Timoney, I think these guys are all good players. Izuchukwu's very exciting. And he kind of is one of those guys I think they've been crying out for, that kind of, that ball carrying ability, the break tackles. Like, he was very good. I thought, obviously went off injured against Leinster, but he'd made a few nice little, breaks against them at the start of the game.
I like Harry Sheridan as well. It's a good player.
He's a good player too. So, and Stewart is good, some kind of dodgy tackling in the cup last year maybe coloured my view of him a little bit, but I do generally think he's a very exciting prospect. So yeah, I just hope they get that. They get those. Hume needs to be playing for them. He's a big player. Cooney, I think they need him back. So yeah, with a full complement, they'll still be a tough team, and I think they'll be coached well. I do think that Richie is the right guy. I do wonder, and I've been a little bit surprised that they haven't been able to coax anyone up there, just because of Richie's connections with the 20s.
Younger players, so Jack Murphy's gone up, Sam Berman, and
Jack Murphy's a fairly you can't get him up. No, but you know what I mean. There's a few.
Ireland Clark is the other one, but they're all 20. They're all last year's batch. Whereas you wonder whether he could have got someone. There's the reason this emerging Ireland tour is coming up, I think, is because they're really frustrated at RFU level that they've had. What was it?
Such success,
3 or 4 Grand Slams, and these players can't get through. And we're starting to see Dave McCann getting in, Ruben Crothers. A couple of players have got opportunities in Ulster, and Ulster I think is the place where they will get chances the next 6 months, but maybe Connacht as well, because there's openings.
It's a brilliant club. I just think people over the last couple of years, because of some of the negativity that's been around it, some of the PR bits, some of the financial stuff, it's come in for a bit of a rap, and they haven't played great in fairness. Let's be honest, but I think it's still a brilliant club up there. I
really think that if they win on Saturday, we haven't focused on the first round of games that much because we got a whole season to talk about. But I think for Ulster, of all teams, if they can beat the champions at home on Saturday night with a young, largely homegrown team with Richie Murphy in charge, I think the sense of a new beginning, it will just give the whole place that bit of a lift as they go to South Africa. Maybe pick off a result over there, because I think it's where I worried about them maybe is during the season when the injuries start, whether they have the depth, whether if they do get off to a bad start, it starts to eat into the young players and eat into their confidence a little bit. Whether they, I don't know how they'll be affected by Ireland. They're not getting a lot of players into squads at the moment, so they could be strong during that window. I think there's potential there for it to be really one of the most exciting teams in the competition because of the
they've had that for a long time, though, haven't they? That has been the I think we're all hoping to see. Kind of Hume kick on, have an uninterrupted kind of season injury wise, because we can see the quality there. Stockdale's had a bad run as well with injuries. You'd love to see him kind of kick on a little bit as well. He's never really recovered from that brilliant season he had with Ireland. So we see the potential. Balakoon has been ravaged by injuries as well. So these are all very exciting talents. They can cut teams apart if they put if they can put themselves in the right positions, and I think they've got enough threat up front if the coaching's good and they're really organised and they really know what they're doing, which I think that's a possibility for them, or probability for them. If they can get the bodies on the pitch, then I think they should be a threat. And if they can get those, as I said, those bodies on the pitch, particularly in the wide spaces, they will be a threat.
I think Europe's going to be so tough for them this year. I think the
expectation will be low, though. No,
it will be low, but the prestige that we attach to it in Ireland always means Connacht have always had to play their full team in Europe, and I think if Richie's been really pragmatic, you wonder whether he can just go. I don't think he can do this because you sell your season tickets based on these big games.
The guys as well get picked for the Irish team in the cup games.
Yeah, and if you impress against Bordeaux or Toulouse, then you get selected on the back of it. But at the same time, the bigger games for Ulster are the interpros either side of those European games, and trying to get into the competition again next year. So it's going to be tricky, and it's a big challenge. Richie Murphy's his first head coaching. No, he's very experienced. He's been around the block. He was obviously with Leinster, Ireland, the 20s, and I think he's impressed me since he's gone in there. But it's that kind of managing the squad, managing expectations around Europe, not trying to maintain the confidence of these young players across what could be a tough season at times is going to be a real challenge for them. But it's one of them. I think all 4 provinces are interesting in different ways this year. They always are, but I think it's a really unique year for all of them. I think they're all coming into it with different challenges and different things. Do you see any of them winning this competition? Glasgow are the champions. The South Africans will be strong. Where do you think the winner's going to come from?
I think Leinster will get it right this year.
Yeah,
I do.
Double.
I think I've been burnt, and I just I'm sure they hate me in there now.
They have the squad. Like, there's no. Like,
I don't
the
think
Sharks
there's
have
any
a very good
excuse.
squad and a very good team, but that like they're in year one almost, because they've recruited so many. Like, you can't. I don't see another squad with the same resources as Leinster.
Well, they don't have the same depth as Leinster either. Like, they have a brilliant. They do have depth. They have enough. They've probably 25, 26 guys who are like top quality, but Leinster probably have 35. And I think the challenge for them is always to keeping people happy and you know, at the same time trying to settle in a team. Like, they just never got a team settled in. As you said, there was a lot of other things outside, like coaches joining late, all these kind of challenges last year they probably had to deal with it. They didn't moan too much about, in fairness. Nienaber did give a time frame when they would get things right, but I never really saw that, I don't think, when it counted anyway in the big games. And they kind of went out with it was a bit of a damp squib at the end. For, you know, the game, it was close on the scoreboard, but I actually didn't think it was that close. I thought they got bullied by the Bulls, actually.
Yeah.
So they need to get that right, and they should get it right. I'm going to say they do the double this year. I think if you just look at what they've added as well, I feel they'll have a little bit too much. I think they'll get it right in the competition. Like, Toulouse are obviously unbelievable, but maybe they might play DuPont in the centres like they're talking about, and we'd all love that, because it'll give the Irish teams a chance. Because why would you not have the best player in the world by, you know, head and shoulders touching the ball as much as possible?
He just gets bored. Like, he wants to go play seven.
In fairness,
like, I wouldn't back against
I can do
him.
anything. Yeah, he's a genius.
Before we finish, just Simon Easterby's been confirmed as the, you know, the worst kept secret in Irish rugby, that he's going to be the Ireland coach while Andy Farrell's away. And that Andy Farrell dynamic of him being there for November and then going off to coach the Lions for the Six Nations window. He'll be doing the kind of observing, he'll be going to games, he'll be going to training sessions at rival camps. I'm sure he'll be on the phone to Easterby, but, you know, he won't have a direct role, and he's so important to that setup from what we see from the outside. Easterby will take the Six Nations. He's doing the Emerging Ireland tour almost as a dry run to get used to it. You were coached by him. He was your he played with him. Jesus, but like, he's been around the scene forever. I think he's really grown, certainly as a media performer the last couple of years. He's come out of his shell a little bit. He's a much more impressive communicator in that space. I'm sure he wouldn't have got the jobs he got without being that behind the scenes. But
very good.
What sort of coach is he?
Yeah. Like, I think he's. I obviously wouldn't have had too much direct dealings with him, because he's, you know, he was fairly specific, I think, when he came in, and I might have missed him when he moved. Did he move into defence? I have a feeling he had a defensive role at some
only
point
after Andy took over.
So I haven't seen that side of him, but he was a great guy, great player, like really one of the absolute gents that you come across. He was like unbelievable athlete, an unbelievable shape, you know, and I think he's taken to the coaching roles very well. People want to have him around. He's in that setup a long time. He's obviously been very, very effective, and the guys obviously respect him, so that's a good place to start. You know, I think good to hear you saying he's coming out of his shell a little bit. I think he's kind of softly spoken, so sometimes people can mistake that for someone who's actually not that. You know, what's the word I'm looking? Like, he doesn't. You might mistake that for someone who maybe doesn't take the bull by the horns to a certain extent. But no, I think he's fairly decisive. Would have been a better word, by the way. I think he has very clear views about how he wants to play the game, just from my little bits of exposure to him, you know. So I think he'd be very effective. I don't think he needs to change too much in Ireland. I think they've figured out the way that we should be playing. I think it suits the size of body we have, just in terms of our player pool. It suits the skills that we're developing. It suits the kind of styles that all the provinces play. So he doesn't need to reinvent the wheel. I don't think he needs to try and be something he isn't either. And I think he'll be very effective, as he's very respected. So
you see, the one area where I really saw come out, like when Caelan Doris was kind of had that bad interaction with Luke Pearson in the first test in South Africa. On the Wednesday we asked Easterby about that, and he was really forceful in backing Doris, and I was really kind of taken aback by how strongly they came out to back him. Now, he was obviously he was on message, but it was just really, it was impressive.
Well, they had insider knowledge on that one. We didn't know about that either, because we were all worried about that. Do you remember?
Absolutely.
We were kind of saying, geez, that was a worrying interaction for Doris.
Yeah, but they weren't like, and it was Easterby who led it. Like,
and Doris was kind of exonerated to a certain extent, wasn't he?
Absolutely, he was, but it was just really interesting. Easterby, I think, under Joe Schmidt would have probably dead batted that question and moved on to the next one, whereas he was comfortable enough to do it. The whole Andy Farrell thing, I think, hovers over the season to a degree, because he's been so central to Ireland over the last couple of years. Obviously, it's not going to affect November. Well, maybe it does affect it in some ways, that he's not going to be there afterwards, but how do you think it's going to affect it?
Yeah, the only thing I'd say on that one is that You know, Farrell, one of what it seems from the outside is that one of his real strengths is that he doesn't try and dampen anyone's personality in there.
Yeah. And
I probably see that with, I think I'd love to ask, I've never asked Paulie yet, actually. I haven't seen him really in a long time, but I'd love to ask that about him. He seems like an unbelievably good character, Farrell, you know what I mean? Like really, like tough, fairly unforgiving if there's something he believes strongly in, but he'll come out to bat for you as well. But I also feel like he never, even the Matt Hansen stuff, he always has a chuckle at it. He doesn't really try and overmanage the guys. They all love being in the setup. I would assume it's probably the same with the coach. They all seem to enjoy it a lot. You can see there's high fives in the coaching box when things go right. Do you know what I mean? They're all like, they look like a tight knit unit, and they all look really happy when. I think remember some of the moves and stuff. You see the coaching staff when a move comes off and they're all like looking, going, that would, it worked. You can see them kind of really rooting for each other. So I would say you miss Farrell, you'll always miss him because he seems to have done a great job with that. But at the same time, he's let everyone flourish in there from what I can see on the outside. And that's only an opinion, that's not a fact or anything like that. I haven't spoken to anyone and got any insider insight, but it seems to me like he's let everyone flourish. So I think they should be able to deal with that, and they should be able to put their own flavour on things if they want to. But also, there's probably not much of a need to do that. This Ireland team is still a brilliant team, and they're off the back of a very impressive win in South Africa. So if they wanted, they probably could, but I don't think they need to change much. And I think the lads will... the lads all look like they'll want to play for those guys too. It's a coaching staff you'd want to play for, I think. Ruds. You know the guys, from interviewing them over however many years.
Well, the results speak for themselves.
Yeah, they do as well. Yeah, that side of it too.
But it's going to be really interesting to watch. Look, it's one of many talking points. We could be here all night, I think.
I was like, are we going to? Yeah, I wasn't sure, but no, it was great actually to get back into it. I was delighted.
Yeah, well, we got our first weekend of action this weekend, and we'll be reviewing it back next week on the left wing. Thanks for joining us this evening. Thanks to Luke and all our production team, and we'll see you all next time.